Welcome to Skeptical Scott and Friends. Heaven can wait, but equality can't. Please join us as we drop the supernatural, embrace the rational, and believe in as many true things as possible. The Bible has been presented as a timeless guide for everyone. Let's challenge that notion today. We're joined by Karis Burkowski and David Fitzgerald, co-authors of the new book, Clearly Written by Boys, A Woman's Guide to the Bible. As they write, quote, "It's no exaggeration to say that for centuries, biblical texts have been wielded as chains to bind women into roles of submission," unquote. How can that be? And how does it impact us now in 2026? Please welcome to the show, Karis Burkowski and David Fitzgerald. All right. Hey, how are you guys?
Woo! Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And hey, where are you joining us from? Karis, you're not too far from me. I'm over near Lake Huron in Canada. Where are you?
I'm in Waterloo, Ontario, about 100 kilometers west of Toronto.
All right. You just challenged our American listeners.
Oh, right, kilometers.
With kilometers. I love it. That's good. No, we deserve it. We deserve it. So it's close to lunchtime for us, but where are you at, David?
I am in Northern California in Humboldt County, the land of Bigfoot and 420. It's just about breakfast time for me.
Well, I love that area. What a beautiful
spot. It's really
spot
gorgeous. Yeah, redwoods for days. Yep.
Yes.
I would love to go there someday, but it'll be after this government changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing both of you at BajaCon.
Yes.
And so, Karis, you have the titles of author, grandmother, humanist officiant, and more. But how about a spirited elder, a feisty crone? Can you tell us about those titles?
Well, I'm old enough to be called an elder, so I'll embrace that. And I went through many years of what they call feminine spirituality, like the whole goddess thing. So I'm one of those people that will embrace and reclaim the word crone. I don't see crone as meaning an old hag. I see crone as meaning a wise woman, like a part of that three maiden mother crone group. It's just another aspect of the goddess, but it's the elder, the wise woman.
I love that. And reading your book, I mean, full of wisdom in terms of how we can see today. David, I've read a few of your other books too. I especially loved Jesus, Mything in Action. I mean, just the title alone. Come on.
Right?
That's awesome. But this book, timely. Why? Well, because the Bible, once again, is a favorite weapon, especially with the resurgence of Christian nationalism. So, David, can you give us the origin story of this book, Clearly Written by Boys?
Yeah, it traces back to BajaCon yet again, because Karis and I met there first time 3 years ago.
Yeah, 3 years ago.
And we were all talking about how Roe v. Wade had been overturned, and it was still on all our minds. And she had already written a book before about the evolution of religion and how men made God. I'd written a book on, the evolution of religion as well. And somehow from that to just talking about how angry we were over the Dobbs decision, it just seemed natural that we were like, yeah, we need to come out with a new book right now. And she'd been talking, I guess, we'd been thinking about doing a second edition of your book. And no, let's us write a book.
Yeah, let's jump right into the zeitgeist right now.
Yeah.
And when David came up with the idea for Clearly Written by Boys, like my other book was Why Men Made God. And when he said Clearly Written by Boys, A Woman's Guide to the Bible, I just jumped on it because I thought, yes, that is so perfect. That is so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I say it's timely now, but I'd say it's timely then too.
It never wasn't timely.
Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have Christian theologian from the 2nd century, Tertullian, saying, you, Karis, are the devil's gateway.
Yeah.
You are the first deserter of the divine law. You destroyed so easily the image of God. I mean, whoa.
Yeah.
Hey, So much so the Son of Man had to die because of you, Karis.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, fun fact, Tertullian is basically the guy who invented the Trinity. He was one of the major figures who hammered out that theology centuries after the fact.
Timely then, timely now. Yeah, thanks for that tidbit, David.
But it also shows you how ingrained the misogyny is baked in right from the get-go by all the major Christian thinkers in the first part of the church history.
And we talk a little bit in the book about how this attack on women is also an attack on the Great Mother Goddess, because they're switching it over to a male god. So, anything that's connected with any of that, with birth, with life-giving, with all of that, gets twisted.
Yeah.
I really appreciated kind of like towards the end of the book when you're like, hey, let's like place this in global history.
Yeah.
So when you say switching from the goddess, can you say more about that?
Well, I mean, for 300,000 years, basically, everybody knew. Humans back then were as smart as humans now. They just didn't have the technology. So everybody could see where babies came from. They knew that it was
Right.
the women that created the babies, and you needed the babies to have the tribe survive. So the ability to create life was a pretty phenomenal thing. And be able to even feed the babies from your own body. I mean, like, wow, like how amazing was that? So obviously, the source of all living had to be a great mother, not a father, a mother. Like, yes, fathers were still very, very important, and we couldn't exist without them. You can't diss the female half of the population. They were very important.
Yeah.
But you can try to control them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny because right out of the gate, when we tell the Eve story and get into the commentary about the Eve story, it's so obvious that story was written to overturn that old Mesopotamian model of how the universe worked. It's putting all that on its head.
Yeah. So from going from a tribe to more like a city, that's how I really appreciated that. Okay, well, if we're going to go into a city, then we need something called property rights. We need all, and so those are the themes that I really see coming out. David, tell our audience a little bit about your background when it comes to the Bible.
Sure. I'm best known in that I'm known at all for making Jesus historicity arguments, and that making the argument that Jesus probably did not exist at all. In fact, I'm convinced full stop that there was no Jesus. And it's not just Jesus, turns out, that has a dodgy backstory. And when you look at all our major religious figures, all of them across the board, East and West, the closer the look, the more they start to look alike, the more you start to see the same evolutionary stages going for each one. And the more it looks like it's the norm for major world religions, successful major world religions, to start with a purely imaginary founder figure. But I don't get into that in this book. This book is all about the Bible and what it says about women.
Right. Both of you do a really great job of bringing up the quote, fictional flourishes. And so just as an example, I mean, let's first talk about the structure of the book, but then as an example, maybe Ruth, and how even just the renaming of characters, you see the fictional aspect of how this becomes a story,
Yeah.
We start with 5 specific stories about 5 specific well-known female characters from the Bible. And we take their story and we keep all of the facts that are given in the Bible, but we tell their story from their perspective, like they were telling their own story. And then after each one, we have commentary, which puts it into its context and its time and its place and what was going on politically in the world at that time, and so on. After we finish those, a break. And then we get into topics, like specific topics that affect women that are coming from the Bible. And we talk about purity culture and all this emphasis on virginity. We talk about women as property. We talk about all sorts of specific topics. And then there's another break. And then we talk about how this affects the women of today. The book does have 3 distinct sections.
I love the inclusion of the artwork, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
As far as how there's a really beautiful painting of each character that you chose. Who was the artist for that?
Her name is Kat Hardy, and she's really brilliant. And we had fun with those pictures because we would tell her who we wanted a picture of, and she would give us a picture. Now, you know the story of Ruth, whither thou goest, I will go, all of that. And she had a beautiful picture of Ruth looking down at some grain in her hand. And she looks very modest and sweet and wonderful. And I remember writing to her and saying, no, 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 no. We're giving this girl a little bit of agency here. Give me some side eye, like she's looking and plotting, and so. And then she did, and she's really good at that. We another one we had to change was
Mary, the Virgin Mary.
Yeah. She gave us a very innocent, sweet, traditional looking Mary too. And we wrote her and said, no, this is a Me Too Mary. Like she's looking up at God and going, you what? What?
Really? Yeah.
Really?
Poor cat. She gave us this beautiful picture. We'd say, no. She was so patient with us.
Yeah.
And they
came at that. I feel like this book is about 426 pages, something like that, plus a workbook and all of that. And, when I first looked at it, I'm like, wow, I hope I can get ready in time. Guys, I read this in just a couple days. I was like, it just kept moving. It just kept moving. And I think the artwork helps. And I also think the inclusion of the
cartoons.
So now the cartoons really are about the characters. That comes with the more of the commentary part. Tell us about the cartoons.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is from cartoonists most of your listeners have probably seen before. He's David Hayward, better known as the Naked Pastor. And he's a former minister turned deconstructed minister who makes the most amazing cartoons. And you can find him all over Facebook and Instagram. And you've probably seen his work before because he can nail in a single panel what we'll spend 2 or 3 pages, breaking down. He can cuts right to the chase. Yeah, we're so lucky. When we contacted him, he was on board. He got back to us in like minutes, not hours or days, but minutes, saying, whoa, this is great. I'm in. And we were just over the moon to get him and Kat on board. And also poets like Danielle Coffin and Shelley Segal, the singer-songwriter. We were swinging for the fences and getting these people, but they don't know us from Adam, and they were on board. I mean, Shelley I've known for ever and ever, but all these other people, we were just delighted that they were instantly entranced by the idea of this, what we were trying to get across in this book.
So I know the idea was received well from the people who wanted to contribute. And I'm going to ask you how it's been received so far from people like me and people who are buying it. But I still want to stick on Ruth for just a minute, because what I like about that too is it really highlighted, for me anyway, the meaning of Ruth, the meaning of her sons' names, just like how obvious it was that this never likely happened. So David, can you say a little bit on that as an example?
Yeah, it's the same thing we see in the Garden of Eden story. It's like, Adam's name means man. Eve's name means basically mother or life bringer. Ruth's husband and brother-in-law, their names mean sickly and dying, wasting away, something like that.
And what do you know? They die soon.
They're instantly gone. Yeah. All the names are super, super apt. And we see that happening a lot in different Old Testament stories. And one of the things we do in the commentary for each of the stories, some of the best loved and most hated women in the Bible, is we talk about how, the fact that Samson's name means son and Delilah's name sounds very much like the word for night is just one more of many, many hints that these are fictional right out of the gate. One of the most interesting things is that when you get into Jezebel's story, Jezebel was clearly a real person. This is clearly a hatchet job written by people at least 3 centuries or more after the fact. And we talk about that for each of the stories. Is like, how do we know this is a real story or not a real story? There's lots to unpack for each of them.
Certainly a lot to unpack, and you guys do a great job at kind of exposing that, the structure of the stories, as well as, why they chose to describe them the way they do. So thank you for that. Karis, how is the book being received so far?
Well, every time I've talked to people about it, they love the idea. I'm starting to carry it around with me wherever I go, and I have been selling selling copies. And people go, oh, what's that? And then you tell them a little bit about it. And well, that sounds interesting. So people are intrigued by the concept.
Yeah.
And then when they find out that it's written in a fun way, like it's written with a little humor, a little sarcasm. For example, like a little bit of humor, we talk about Samson and Delilah. Now, everybody thinks of Delilah as this really awful person. But we start off with her in the marketplace, and she sees this hot guy standing there, and she knows who he is. Everybody knows who Samson is because he's been killing off their soldiers, the Philistine soldiers. Yeah. And like she thinks he's pretty hot, so she thinks she can wrap him around her finger. So she starts walking towards him, looking right at him across the marketplace, and he sees her coming, and he's been going to that area to partner up with the Philistine women because they're a lot hotter than the ones back home, the humble vessels with the with the headscarves on. So he sees her coming. He's looking at her like, oh yeah, honey, you think? And so because it's from her perspective, we can tell this story in a fun way and make it a lot more lively than what you're reading in the Bible.
I love it.
Just bring them to life and having them talk like real people. The story of Delilah in the Bible, it's clearly a fairy tale, and they're both two-dimensional cardboard cutout characters. Yeah. I mean, they're just kind of ridiculously flat, but just bringing them to life in the context of the story. And for the most part, we don't make any changes to the story. We're not like trying to reboot it. We're just trying to bring it to life. If this was a real story, what would it be happening?
Well, David, you do have to bring it to life because I think about how often are women actually even highlighted, and when they are,
the number of female characters to male characters, full stop, is fractional. The number of named women, as opposed to so-and-so's concubine, so-and-so's daughter, so-and-so's neighbor, is smaller still. The ones who actually pass the Bechdel test, I think only 3 books in the entire Bible even managed to pass that. And that's including books that are named for the main character, like Ruth, like Esther. It was really crazy just what a switch it is just to tell it from their point of view. If we did nothing else but do that, that changes everything already.
So we start with those stories because they kind of draw you in. Like they're fun to read. And then once you get past those and the commentary for those and you get into the topics, you're already kind of in our team. And then you get into the heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And even with the heavy stuff, though, we try and express it in a way that's fun to read.
Sure.
But by the time we've had people tell us, I've had women say that, it made me laugh. I thought it was cool. I thought it was fun. Then I got into it and it made me angry. And there were times when I just had to slam the book shut and sit there for an hour. Like there was just so much to think about.
Yeah.
If nothing else, this book is going to start discussions, and that's what we're most excited about.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. The response from our beta readers was just over the top. I mean, people love this book, with the exception of the Christian women that we had approached to get it, who were loving it, until we get about 2/3 of the way. And then we start talking about the New Testament, and we start talking about Jesus. And is Jesus a good guy to women?
I think you put it, is Jesus a bad boyfriend? Is
exactly.
How you put it. I love that chapter.
Thank you. Yeah, we did it like a Cosmo quiz, and it's like, girl, is this guy catfishing you? Is he gaslighting you?
He doesn't get back to you, right? He's
Yeah, and
he's ghosting you, man.
And it, like everything in this book, the things that start out funny, all of a sudden the seriousness of it comes out really soon. It's like, we're making fun and we're laughing about this, but we're not saying nothing that's not true. And it's like, there's something to think about.
We actually lost a couple of beta readers.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
They got that far and they said, you know what? I can't do this.
Good luck with this book, but I can't sign up on this. Yeah.
I can't see Jesus as somebody who is being emotionally abusive. I can't see Jesus as blackmailing me. Love me or else, right? I mean, wow. Yeah, I mean, when you see the parallels to some like domestic issues today, right?
Sure. And just seeing the way he treats women and how people just bend over backwards and do all these mental gymnastics to say, oh, but it's really wonderful and sweet that, even though he called this woman a dog and said, you'll eat scraps under the table. But at the end, he was nice to her. Well, we take the exact same situation when a Roman centurion comes up and does the same thing, and he bends over backwards, says, "Oh yes," it's like night and day. Could not be more different responses.
Well, I've heard people say you can tell a lot about a guy by how he treats his mom. So I'm sure we got that covered, right? We're good there? Are we good there?
I wish we'd remember to put that line in there, because that would be such a great intro to that section where we do talk about his mom or his.
Well, and go ahead and comment on that. Go ahead and comment on how Jesus treats his mom.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. We've got 4 gospels, right? We have more than that, actually, but we have 4 official gospels. If we didn't have one of them, we wouldn't know anything about Mary at all. We wouldn't even know her name. If we didn't have another one, we wouldn't know anything about Mary Magdalene other than just a bare bones mention among other women in some other context completely. There's so little about these 2 characters. And we really get into both the Mary Marys, Virgin Mary and Mary Magdalene, because they're so large in Christian mythology, if you will. They're so large in Christian history. And yet those 2 Marys are these evolved creations that have evolved over time and are nothing like what we see in the Bible. And part of that is because a medieval Pope Gregory, mistake and conflated 3 different women into Mary, and then made her a whore on top of that. Which none of that is in the Bible at all. None of it. Which
I was not aware of until I read that. I'm like, wow, you're taking 3 characters, you're kind of mixing it together.
Yep. And then you throw some sex in on top of that. Yeah.
Well, you got to make it appealing somehow, right?
Oh, don't get me started. because that is one of the things that we emphasize in this book.
Right.
Like, it is so obviously a book that was written by guys for men to read. There's all kinds of titillating stuff scattered throughout the whole book. Yeah. And you could just imagine all the people who could read were men, because they were the only ones who were allowed to learn how to read. And all the ones who read the Bible and preached the stories were men. So there was stuff in there that was like secret for just them to enjoy. And then they would do the sermons and stuff. They would leave that stuff out, and they would make it all lovely and, convincing and whatever they wanted it to be at the time. But once you think of it as being written by boys for boys, it's right there. You can't miss it once you see it.
Yeah.
Karis, you, I don't know who came up with the concept, but I really do love it. The whole, let's just imagine for a minute the beginning of this. A bunch of guys with cigars.
That was all Karis. That was all.
Yeah, that was me. I had fun with that.
I loved it. And so it's like, what would the conversation sound like between those guys as they're inventing this, right?
Well, sure. I mean, I wasn't picturing old guys with cigars. I was picturing young guys. I was picturing young incels trying to create a perfect world where women did all the work and they were available for sex and they couldn't leave. And if they tried to leave, they couldn't have any money because they would control all of the money. And they would make sure that inheritance only went to sons, not daughters. And we would make sure that they had to be virgins so that they wouldn't have any prior experience, so they couldn't tell how bad their lovers were, and just all sorts of things like that. So I just had fun imagining these guys making up this fantasy and then saying, well, kind of look at the Bible. There's not a lot of what's in there.
Like, if that had happened, what would it look like? Gosh, it's an awfully lot like it looks like.
And it's hard to imagine a worse scenario either. Yeah.
But I have to say, on the other hand, we do spend a fairly lengthy section talking about the evolution of the patriarchy in reality, like how it really happened. And then nobody sat down and invented it.
Right.
And how it gradually happened, and then after that it was like, oh well, let's maintain this, let's keep this going, this works well for us.
We think it's real important to question what you know, so before you leave this podcast, it's the skeptic of the show.
Today's skeptics are Doctors Nina Dovik Brockman and Ellen Stokendahl. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing these correctly, but they wrote this, quote, "The absurdity of virgin testing is illustrated in a study done on 36 pregnant teenagers. When doctors examined their hymens, they could only find clear signs of penetration in 2 out of the 36 girls. So yes, this underlies the silliness of virgin testing, but I mean, tell us about the wisdom in the Bible to determine whether a new wife was a virgin and how to deal with the results of that test.
Well, we call that section your hymen or your life, because for many women throughout Jewish and Christian history, and probably other religions as well, your virginity wasn't just a nice thing to aim for. It was, the baseline. And if you didn't follow it, you were stoned to death. All these rules were put in place. Now, what can men do in the Bible to get them killed by other men? They have to mess around with other men. Women, they get killed for everything, anything. You have sex, you raped, all these things can get you killed.
And the other thing was, because these men that were writing this book didn't understand the physical reality of a hymen, they thought that when you first had sex, there was this seal that would break, and then there would be blood. Well, as those doctors that you pointed out, it's very stretchy, and it doesn't always break, and sometimes it's not even there to begin with, or it's only there a little bit, or like people are built differently.
But they treat it like the curtain to the Holy of Holies. It's like it's all or nothing,
Right. So when they say in the Bible, if she's not a virgin on her wedding night, if she doesn't bleed, if there's no drops of blood on the sheets, then take her out and stone her. What? Like they just didn't know any better, and because of that, all this horribleness happens to all these girls.
And Republican senators today are no wiser than they are and are making legislation based on this. That's what makes us super crazy.
Yes.
I think of the witch burnings of times past and all of that, and how it's all kind of related in terms of the control aspect, of course, but it does make me sad. It makes me wonder how many women were caught in that.
Yeah,
and killed.
and still are, and will be in the future if this keeps going this way. Yeah, this is why we fight.
And this lack of knowledge extends to things like this whole taking away the rights to abortion. They don't understand that, no, you can't move an ectopic pregnancy that's in the fallopian tubes. She's going to die. You have to get rid of this thing. There's just so many ways that we know they don't know what they're talking about. And yet they're making laws, and the laws are controlling women and messing up their lives.
You guys are really doing the work for me as far as where I wanted to go next, which is we can scoff at how insane this, quote, guidebook was for our ancestors, but it makes me wonder what future historians will point out when studying our modern times.
Yeah.
In other words, how are biblical teachings still impacting us in 2026? You bring up religious trauma syndrome. So can we spell that a little bit, like what that might mean today? There's so many examples you can go with.
It's a wealth of choices, and they're all happening right now in culture wars, in legislative wars. Everything that gets aimed at sexism, homophobia, racism, it's all driven, so much of it driven by religious intolerance and biblical intolerance in particular. I mean, we talk about the matriarchy versus the patriarchy, and everyone seems to think that the matriarchy is a flip-flopped patriarchy where women are now on top and men are the crushed underneath their feet. Nothing could be further from the truth. A matriarchy is a completely different animal, a completely different hierarchy or lack of hierarchy.
Yeah, say more about that.
Well, I'm trying to not go down too many rabbit holes, because the point is that all this stuff that we get from the Bible, and particularly from the Old Testament, they are trying to drag us back to that. They don't want women. They want men to vote for the household. They want men to be in charge of everything. They want people who aren't men, gay people, trans people. They want them out. They just want them to not exist anymore. And they want white men to be on top of all the other men, rich white men on top of the rest of the white men. Nobody thinks they're the victim in this, because they're constantly being told that, oh, no, you're the oppressed minority here. You're the real Americans. You're the real Christians. And once we get back to what the Bible says, when we get back to fundamentals, everything's going to be hunky-dory. though we'll always have to be on eternal vigilance and fighting the enemy from within and without, and that will never end, and that will be eternal war. They just don't see how this is going to play out. They don't see where this is taking them into pure on Hitler territory. Some of them are rooting for it to go into Hitler territory. There's just so much retrograde motion going on right now. We have to fight against it. And there's more of us who want to fight that than there are these yahoos in the Trump cult.
Mm-hmm.
Cheering.
But as long as they can control the press and control what people are hearing and learning.
Well, this is why
the school systems. Yeah.
This is why the Seth Meyers and the Stephen Colberts and the Jimmy Kimmels are so important, because if nothing else, they're our canary in the coal mine. As long as we have people in the radio and in TV and on Facebook, for that matter, wherever you have media, free to criticize Trump, there's still hope. It's no coincidence that we've had the biggest government protest in American history right now. Yeah.
Well, the word retro usually means kind of cool, but I think you're really bringing up a good point here, that not just the rise of Christian nationalism, but just in the culture out there of when I hear something like "Make America Great Again," it's like, let's like fit everybody back into the biblical structure that we desire, Karis, anything you want to mention on this?
Well, they make sure that people who are striving for equality for women, like the word feminist has become like almost like Antifa. Like it's something that no, we can't have all these rabid feminists, I would actually like to see it where equality is considered normal.
Right.
And instead of saying people who want equal rights are feminists, we think equal rights are normal, and people who don't want equal rights are sexist or misogynist or whatever. Yeah. But at this point, we still need the word feminist, I think. Yeah. Like we're still not, we're far from there yet. So
just like the word atheist, for that matter. Yeah. Maybe there'll be one day when that's just the norm and we won't think of it that way. But here's some good news. I don't want to end on without getting to the good news. Right now,
I appreciate it.
In America, there's a group called the Barna Group that does track.
What?
It's a polling company called the Barna Group that specializes in tracking evangelical trends in America. And over the last 20 years, in the 4 decades of them doing studies tracking American trends, right now, since about the time of the pandemic to now, for the first time in history, there are more men in the pews than women in the pews. And it's the biggest gap they've seen, gender gap they've seen ever, 45% to about 36%. Women are leaving the church in America. And it makes the point that, they're not protesting, they're not complaining. They're just saying, bye. And exactly, they're just fading away. And it's like, I don't know who's making the refreshments for Sunday school now or teaching the vacation Bible school classes, but increasingly it's not the women. If that trend continues, and who knows if it will or won't, things are going to change for Christianity, because it's going to be an all boys club if this keeps up. And deservedly so, but that's not gonna stand either, and
that's partly what we're trying to do with this book.
Exactly.
We're trying to tell the women, we're not telling you whether to be believers or not, we're just letting you know what's in there. And once you know what's in there, then you can decide, and you can decide perhaps with a little more knowledge and a little more awareness of what it's doing to you. And I think if they just quietly walk away, it's going to be the biggest thing that ever happened to that kind of religion. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm hoping it'll work.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And you're bringing up a good point too, that you're exposing not just what's in the Bible, but how was it made?
Yeah.
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 Like, how was it made? And let's actually read the parts that a man is not telling you to read.
Exactly.
From the pulpit.
Right.
And let's get rid of the hand waving and the rationalizations and the mealy mouths. Oh, this is what it really means, the interpretation.
Right. The reinterpretation.
Yeah. And just let's look at, you're taking it out of context. No, let's put it in context. Let's look at the context. Right. And it makes it even worse.
So that's why at the end, we did a little section for book clubs, because we were thinking, so we get a couple people convinced that this is what they need to know, and they can have a book club and call in their Christian friends that haven't thought about any of this, and we give them ideas for things to discuss and things to look up, and I think it's a way, like over a glass of Chianti or whatever, like you're learning a few things, and we'll see.
And hopefully they'll get their Christian friends in the book club, or they'll buy it for them for Christmas presents, who knows, and birthday presents. We try to be very sympathetic to Christian readers throughout the book as much as we can, even though we are so mad and furious about these things, because there's plenty of Christians out there who are good feminists. There's plenty of Christians out there who are making the world a better place through their Christianity.
Right.
You have no problem with that whatsoever. But the fact is, the ones who are doing the most good are doing it because they are taking their religion in their own hands, and they're refusing to buy into the toxic stuff. And if they disagree with us that it's baked into Christianity, well, it's on them to show us that that's the case.
Yeah.
And we'd be delighted to stand next to and help along with that.
Well put. Hey, so we're going to wrap things up here, but is there anything else you want our listeners to know?
You can find us on Facebook and on Instagram and on our website, clearly written by
boys.com.
And we say it's a woman's guide to the Bible, but honestly, we think everybody should be reading this. Atheist men, Christian men, atheist women, atheist women. It's for everybody. It's for anybody concerned about the Bible and anybody interested in the Bible.
I would also say it's a good read. It's fun. It's like read it not just because you're going to learn something. It's not like a textbook. Yeah. It's more fun than that.
That's why I read it so fast. I mean, it was it moved at a good clip. I love the way it's structured. Like I said, I'm a history guy, so I learned some history as well. But it's just, guys, it's rich. It's awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
Well, Karis, with that, I think it's time we finish. So we're going to finish some final words of your book. In this time where people are trying to push women back into their biblical roles, Karis, can you just finish the episode with those words that are on page 426?
Yeah, we end the book with this, actually. After we've explored all the way to here, we get to this point where we say, there is no word of God. There has never been a word of God. There are only words of men pretending to speak for a God. And that is a vast difference.
True that. Thank you. Amen. Thank you so much for joining us on Skeptical Scott and Friends, guys.
Thanks, Scott.
You too. Thank you.
We'll see you in Sarnia.
Yeah,
see you in Sarnia. Baja Con.
Gather round, ladies, we've got news for you. A bunch of ancient fellas wrote a book or two. They said we've got the answers, every word is true. Then spent a lot of chapters telling women what to do. Cover up your hair, be quiet in the church. Ask your husband later, your husband comes first. Well, isn't that convenient? What a cosmic surprise. The guys who made the rules put the guys in charge of the lives. Clearly written by boys, with their rules and their joys. Lots of laws about the women, lots of toys for the boys. Don't question the authority, don't make too much noise. If God wrote the Bible, where the hell was the woman's voice? There's a man gets 100 wives, apparently that's okay. But a woman talks back once and she's making God upset all day. A man can make a vow, a woman needs permission, and somehow every ancient dude gets a starring role in the mission. Kings and priests and prophets, a whole testosterone parade. But if you're looking for a woman making policy delayed, clearly written by boys.
Thanks for listening to Skeptical Scott and Friends. Find our link tree and more at skepticalscott.com. Have a question? Or are you interested in sharing a part of your testimony? Email me at heyskepticalscott@gmail.com. See you at least every first and third Friday. May skeptical thoughts be with you. Cheers.
Hey! Women made their mark. Sure, Deborah was a judge, and Esther showed some spark. There's Ruth and then there's Mary and women at the tomb. But considering the subject matter, they sure got little room. It's almost like the authors were writing from their time, ancient Middle Eastern patriarchy with a heavenly design. Clearly written by boys, ancient patriarchal noise. A little God, a little culture, a whole lot of male employed. So if you're wondering why the rules seem so, well, male, maybe check who held the pen before you buy the tale. Clearly written by boys, that's the punchline, that's the choice. If heaven had a message, it'd say, girls, you gotta lower your voice. Wait, you're telling me the omniscient creator of the universe needed a bunch of Bronze Age dudes to explain women to women?